One of the more popular reviews we have ever done on this channel was our take on Polk's R700, the flagship speaker in their reserve line. That review sparked an entire conversation about why we as audiophiles continue to push ourselves to want more. Now, the R700 remains one of our reference speakers, but they are increasingly difficult to find, which is why we are taking a look at their little brother, the R600. So the question is, can you get a similar experience for less? The Polk R600 is a two-way tower speaker featuring the same 1-inch pinnacle ring radiator tweeter and 6.5-inch turbine cone mid-range driver as the R700, only the 600 has two. This is because the R600 lacks the 700's dual 8-inch woofers. Now, both speakers have the same downward firing flow port. All combined, this gives the Polk a reported frequency response of 43 Hz to 38 kHz. Compared to the R700's bass, which extends down to 38 Hz, the R600 is less weighty down low, but for a smaller two-way tower, 43 Hz isn't too bad. When it comes to power, the R600s don't appear to be quite as picky as the 700s, with a sensitivity of 87.5 dB and an impedance of 8 ohms, but it is capable of dipping down to 4. This means that the R600 needs a 4 ohm capable receiver or amp to perform its best. Now, we tested the 600 on Marantz's flagship processor in amp, the AV10, and amp10, our Onkyo RZ50, the new Pioneer 805, and Audiolab 7000A. All were up to the task when it came to driving the R600, so as long as you have a good quality amp or receiver with 50 watts of power that is also good with a 4 ohm load, you should be fine. I'm not sure I've seen a finish option that is more sought after than the matte white pair of R700s we were accidentally sent. While I'm sorry to report that there's still no way you can get a pair of R700s in white, the R600s, however, can be. Built and finished to the same standards as the rest of the reserve line, the R600s are available in matte black and walnut as well. You get the same magnetic grills, and nothing beats the heather gray Polk has chosen to complement the white finish here, making it one of the more thoughtful grill speaker combos I've seen. While I'm not a fan of the feet design, they are integral to the speaker and its performance, so their presence isn't really optional. But overall, this is a simple, streamlined, and well-crafted speaker that should provide for years, if not decades, of enjoyment. Now, the R600s were easier to set up than the 700s. I mean, they're obviously smaller, they weigh nearly half as much, and they aren't too picky with placement due to that downward firing port. I still recommend that you pull them out into your room about 12 inches and definitely avoid placing them directly in corners unless, of course, you really want to load up the bass. In our room, they worked best around 18 inches off our front wall with 9 feet between them, putting them roughly 10 feet from our sofa. Now, imaging and soundstage are two areas where I feel this speaker excels, though you don't have to apply a great deal of toe-in to enjoy either. If you want to bring out the top-end extension, pointing them directly at your listening position will give the 600's tweeter a bit more presence. So how do they measure against the R700s? Well, a few quick, I did 8 sweeps from our listening position at a level of 75 dB, and I mean, wow. For roughly $1,700 a pair, the R600s were impressive. In our room, from 200 Hz on up, the 600s are as neutral a speaker as I could ask for. Rolling off just as you transition from the mid-range to the treble, but not as much as the R700s, meaning the lesser 600 should have a greater sense of top-end presence compared to the 700s, something I know some of you watching are going to appreciate. But like with the 700s, the 600s have the boost down low that helps the speaker feel weightier on their own and makes crossing them over with a sub pretty easy. Let's just get one thing out of the way. The R600s are not the R700s equal. As much as I, and I'm guessing everyone else here, were hoping for an R700 with a bit less bass, that's not exactly the case. While both models have similar sonic traits, the 600's smaller cabinet volume and two-way design actually sound more like a larger pair of R200s than a mini R700. But before you click off, the 600s are capable of one thing the 700s don't always manage. Their performance in the upper mid-range to the treble give them a more forward in-room presence that's never bright or fatiguing. Combined with the lack of bass, the 600s are just more mid-range and treble focused, which is great for intelligibility. If you find the 700s are too soft, up top, the R600s may just be the speaker you've been looking for. Now, adding a subwoofer to this 600 helps to round out their performance, and in my opinion, you should definitely budget for one, especially if your room is on the larger side. We used our RP1000 from KLIPSCH, which continues to be an absolute workhorse and pairs well sonically with every speaker we've thrown its way. Now, if you add a sub, the delta between the R700 and 600 does shrink, but so does the 600's value proposition. Even with the addition of a sub, the R600 doesn't quite have the total coherence of the R700 on its own. While the mid-range is neutral and it doesn't alter the timbre of instruments or vocals when compared directly to the 700s, the 600s do sound just a little bit leaner. Now, adding a sub, in my opinion, brings some needed weight to the 600's mids, but if you like when performers take that step or two forward in the soundstage, you may prefer the 600s on their own. As for the treble, if you focus only on the tweeter, the 600 and 700 are going to be more or less equal, but because of their lack of low bass, the 600 treble feels less rolled off. Good news, this is not a tweeter that you're likely to find aggressive, shrill, or worse, painful. In fact, it is near perfect for all genres of music and movies, unless, of course, you desire that brighter sound. As I said earlier, the R600 soundstage is wide and deep with good separation between instruments and performers. Now, it is possible to bring everything into even sharper focus by experimenting just a bit with toe-in. Dynamically, both Polk speakers like a little bit of volume to come alive. The 600s don't need quite as much as the R700s, which makes them a hair better at lower volumes or when mated to a lower power amplifier. Still, for maximum grunt, expect to turn these speakers up just a little bit more than you may be used to if you're coming from, say, a KLIPSCH or a JBL. If you've jumped to this section of the review, you need to rewind all the way back for all of the specific R600, 700 comparisons I've already made. For everyone else, the best Polk Reserve speaker is still the R700. And for an extra $500 a pair, I believe the cost is justified. Now, if you are in a smaller space, or maybe you already own a good subwoofer, go ahead, check out the R600s. If you don't want more bass, or maybe you just don't want to mess with getting the bass just right, the 600s will give you more mid-range and treble presence, plus they come in white. But for our room, the R700 maintains its top dog status. Comparing the R600 to the KLIPSCH 8000F Mark IIs, both are two-way speakers. However, the 600s are the more composed and, dare I say, audiophile of the two. The 8000F2s definitely have more weight, are far more dynamically interesting at lower volumes, and have that live sort of you are there sound. If you value neutrality and don't want a speaker that occasionally may wander into bright territory, the R600 will likely be a better fit. Which brings me to my favorite comparison, and it's one that I thought about a lot while listening to the Polks. Of course, I'm talking about ARENDAL's 1961 Tower. Now, I prefer the overall style of the ARENDAL, but know that both speakers are space-friendly designs. Both have some bass limitations, both are 4 ohms, both are crazy linear, especially at their price point, and both sound excellent for music and movies. Now, I prefer the sound of the ARENDAL, but it may just come down to your budget. So if you can't quite swing for the more expensive 1961 Towers, the R600 is an option. Having heard the R200s, the R700, and now the R600s from Polk's Reserve line, I feel comfortable and confident saying that pound for pound, taking price and performance into account, Polk's entire Reserve line may go down in hi-fi history as being one of the best budget-friendly loudspeaker series ever brought to market. I cannot recall another time where an entire line of products were so just thoroughly enjoyable at every turn. I honestly do not think that you can go wrong with any speaker in the Reserve line, and the R600 cements that for me. So when it comes to obtainable loudspeakers, say hello to one of the GOATs. So that's it for me and my take on Polk's R600, but before we go, we can't get out of here without having your opinion. So what say you, my dear?
Oh, well, before I get into that, I have a question for you.
Oh. Something
that came up when you were reading through your portion of the review. Mm-hmm. Now that you have heard all 3 of the Reserve speakers, the R700s, the 600s, and the 200s.
And to be clear, there are a few more speakers in the line. But
there are?
Yeah, I think there's an even smaller tower, and obviously there's centers.
Oh,
and
well, yeah,
stuff like
I knew
that.
there was a center.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But
I think we've bracketed
out
it
of the 3.
Out of the 3, yeah.
We have reviewed now.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you couldn't get the R700s either because they're not in stock, or you don't have the space for them.
Okay.
And since you talk about how you believe that you still need a subwoofer with the R600,
Yeah.
what would you get?
Boy, that is a good question. And honestly, I think it's going to come down. I'm going to try and put myself in the shoes of a prospective customer. I think it's going to ultimately come down to budget, because obviously bookshelf speakers on stands take up the same physical footprint as at least a pair of R600s. They would still be smaller than R700s. I cannot stress how much larger that speaker really is. So you're not going to save any space going with bookshelf speakers on a stand over the R600s. So knowing that, if you then factor in the cost of a subwoofer, now I have to factor in the cost of the sub that I use and recommend, which is the RP1000. I want to say that sub is pushing close to $800, $750, $800. In which case, the price delta is only a couple $100 if you go with the bookshelves versus the R600s. But I will say that once you realize that the R200 and 600, both in my opinion and in a room like ours, need a subwoofer, not only just for full range playback for home theater use, but for music as well. I think it really does help both of those speakers. You are talking about a total purchase price that nears the R700 on its own. So which of the two would I do?
Wait, just one quick clarification. It approaches the R700 or the R600?
Both the R200 and R600 with a sub, and in the case of the R200, stands plus a sub, you start getting close to $2,000. You really do. In which case you're in R700 territory. But if you can't get your hands on R700s, or you really want that white finish, having had this experience, I actually think I would probably go with the R600s. So yeah, that's I think where I'm at.
Okay, that's great. Great answer. One speaker that you did not mention.
Okay.
There's always one.
There's always one.
There's always one.
Or 100.
Or yeah. Some days you're better than others.
Some days are better than others.
One I want to ask you about is, is the Q ACOUSTICS 5040.
The brand new ones.
Just reviewed. It's a seriously great speaker for around $1,500.
Honestly, in this instance, I'm going to go Q ACOUSTICS. I'm going to go Q ACOUSTICS because they're not as linear in our room. They're still very respectable. Do not misunderstand. But ARENDAL and the Polks, they're very good. If you're one of these people that is like, it needs to be neutral, because anything that's not that, anything that is character, is bad. ARENDAL and Polk, in our room and in our experience at least, are going to be better for that type of a listener. That said, the Q ACOUSTICS are also very neutral leaning, maybe not quite to the degree that the Polk and ARENDAL have proven to be, but close enough for me that I actually like some of the little hint of warmth that they inject or have in comparison to the Polk. And the other reason I choose the Q ACOUSTICS is because, for me, I actually like the tweeter in the Q ACOUSTICS just a little bit better. That's not saying that I'm poo-pooing on the Pinnacle Ring Radiator tweeter. It is exceptional, and I stand by the fact that it works. It just works with all genres of music. You can play it the worst MP3 you've ever had just kicking around on your phone. It's still probably going to be pretty listenable. Now, I can't say that exactly for the Q ACOUSTICS. It will kind of sometimes bring out some of that sibilance on really poor recordings. However, it seems to be just a little bit more airy and extended, regardless of like your toe in. Like, you don't have to play with it as much. And so it's just a little bit more flexible, in my opinion. Now, for some of you who have let me know, like, you've gone and demoed various Q ACOUSTIC speakers and you said they're still too soft. If that's you, if you're like, hey, Q ACOUSTICS is too soft and that Pinnacle Ring Radiator tweeter is too soft, then you need to be looking at an entirely different set of speakers. You may need to be looking at some Focals. You may need to be looking at Sonus Faber and stuff like that. But in the comparison you asked about, I'm going Q Acoustics.
I would too.
Yeah.
I like that speaker a lot, and it looks really nice, which is important to me.
Yeah.
And you do save a little bit of money, so I think that's that's always great. I actually found the Q Acoustics to be a little bit more intelligible.
Okay.
For me.
I buy that.
Than the R600. As far as the Polk R600, or my take on it.
Yeah, yeah.
I would personally rather save a little bit extra money and get the R700s.
Okay.
If they were available and all the other things, stars aligned. To me, the price of the R600 isn't enough of a savings.
Yeah.
Again, that's for me.
Yeah.
And I did not find them as clear or as intelligible as the KLIPSCH 8000Fs.
Oh, yeah. No.
So if that is a concern for you,
Yeah.
because I know a lot of people have similar issues as I do when it comes to that, understanding actor dialogue and so on. I would look at the KLIPSCH speakers way before I looked at
the R600s. Oh, for that specific purposes alone, absolutely.
And I just think that I love the KLIPSCH sound, especially that 8000F. I think it's the Mark II.
The Mark II, yeah.
The
Mark I was
the
great
original
too.
one. Yeah, the original
but the two is better.
Yeah, the 2 is better. The original model was also good.
Yeah.
But I feel like they refined some of the bass control in the new KLIPSCH 8000F2. So I would definitely get that over the first model. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm landing.
Okay.
In this.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, R700 still takes top honors for you. The big one, the R700.
In the
reserve line.
In the reserve line, yes.
Still takes top honors. And then when it comes to the 600, because there's not enough of a price difference for you, you would also cross shop 8000F Mark IIs, or you would even go Q Acoustic, the new one, over the 600. Okay.
Yes.
I think that's fair. I think that's completely fair. How do you feel, though, if I can ask, I asked myself this question for the conclusion, so I am curious, on the whole, because you've had the same experience with the reserve line that I've had, that has now spanned almost 2 years, off and on with different things, and we've even gotten some of the speakers back. How do you feel about the reserve line? Co-sign it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
It's really good. Wholesale would buy it over anything from the Legend line.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I think that line's probably, I don't have any official word on this, but I would imagine the L line or Legend line is probably close to being discontinued.
Yeah, I mean the Reserve series I think is better, in my opinion, and it's not as expensive. So kind of, it's a no-brainer for me. But yeah, well done, Polk. I think that they've made an entire series that is very difficult to beat.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is now our take on Polk's R600 tower speaker. What do you guys think? I know some of you guys have been asking for us to take a look at this, so I hope you found this video enjoyable, worth the wait, and informative. But now I gotta know. What do you guys think of the R600 and the reserve line? I called it one of hi-fi's goats. Do you agree with me? Sound off in the comments below. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Go ahead, ring that bell so that you're notified when new videos come out. If you use any of the links that Kristi left for you down below, know that that's a great way that you've continued to show your support for this channel and the work that we both do here, and we thank you all very much for doing that. Follow me on Instagram, Recovering Audiophile, and that is it for us today. So remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next video. Bye.